started, I want to not take up your time today. Can everybody hear me all right? Okay. So welcome to our final election of the year. Hopefully our final election in a pandemic. We're 2 for 2 so far with pandemic elections. We've gone and done a really nice job. You guys have done great. I really appreciate it. What we're going to talk about today is on the slides here. You've got a copy of the slide presentation. Yes? You didn't get a copy? No. Okay, we'll get a copy for you. I'm going to ask Mary to bring one in. Okay, so we'll get started. Joanne's going to come up here and work this so that I don't have to do that the whole time we're doing this. So what we'll talk about, new poll workers, a couple recent court decisions, everybody's favorite topic of 2020, COVID-19, the current election, what absentee voting is going to look like, election observers, and then we'll do that review of other material. And so for new poll workers, just a couple of things. I'm going to go through and give you a lot of information today. It's going to seem overwhelming. It'll be all right. Don't worry about it. We're going to do our best to put you with an experienced worker so that you're not overwhelmed on election day. You've got chief inspectors there that have been doing this for years, that know what they're doing. You're going to be all right. Just try and look at everything from a 10,000-foot view. And not get worked up in the details that we're necessarily talking about. So, Joanne, can I have the next slide, please? So, we have 279 people that signed up to work this election. And I've been with the city for 13 years. We've done a lot of elections. We've never had this many people work an election. We've never had this many people sign up to work an election. A lot of new faces. Okay, so if you're a new poll worker and you haven't done it yet, we need you to go to Human Resources at City Hall and complete some paperwork so we can pay you. This next thing says if any poll worker wants to decline pay, we've got paperwork you can fill out for that too. That's a promise the City Council made me make, that I would make that offer to you. I don't encourage any of you to decline pay, but you certainly can if you'd like. Next slide. Okay, a couple recent court decisions. The 7th Circuit Court of Appeals ruled in the one Wisconsin case. You cast your mind back to 2015 or thereabouts, and we had a bunch of changes to election laws, including residency requirements, and it's been tied up in court until August of this year. So the court upheld the law. So we're back now, and the big thing that you need to know for voter registration on Election Day is the residency requirement is 28 days. So you have to be at your current residence for 28 days in order to register to vote. The 7th Circuit also overturned Judge Peterson's order to extend the deadline for absentee ballots to be mailed in. As of this morning, we had issued almost 22,000 absentee ballots, and almost 19,000 of those have been returned. So there's a lot that have come back. We still have a number that are out there. We could see people decide not to mail their ballot and to come see you guys on Election Day. So we're going to talk about what that looks like, because that's important. COVID-19. As you know, COVID-19 has changed voting. It's changed pretty much everything. So in April and August, 77% of people who voted by absentee ballot. For some historical perspective, people typically voted on the range of 15% absentee. Many of those folks are indefinitely confined voters who are confined to home and can't get out to the polling place. Presidential elections, that would jump up a little bit. In 2016, we had about 9,700 people that voted absentee, which was about 30% of the people who voted. This year, I expect that we're going to see somewhere in the neighborhood of 25,000 absentee ballots. What we've seen with in-person absentee voting, which is occurring right now at City Hall, is that we're getting a lot of new first-time voters. They've needed some help. They're not familiar with the process. They aren't used to it, so you'll probably see some of that on Election Day. We have registered since August 25th, probably about 2,800 people. The nice part of that is it's 2,800 you guys don't have to do on Election Day. For those of you that have been around, you know presidential elections will typically register 4,000 to 5,000 people on Election Day. I don't think you're going to see that this year. I do think you'll still see a lot, but not that many. We've put safety protocols in place to protect, first of all, you guys, but then also the voters. You know, one of the things I think we can all be proud of when it comes to COVID-19 is that we've done 2 elections in this pandemic, and there's not one case in Rock County that can be traced back to somebody getting COVID-19 because of voting. And I think that's because of the varying safety precautions that we've put in place, and we're going to continue to tweak and try and make those better. If you remember, in August, we had the shields up on the tables. And one of the things that we realized was those shields were a little bit short. They were okay if, you were my wife who's 5'3.5". Got to throw that half in. She gets upset if I don't. But for someone like me who's 6'4", I got up to the table and I was talking right over that shield. So we've added extenders to all those shields so that they go up higher. Now the drawback to that's a little bit harder to hear people. They need to speak up more. And it's okay to ask people to repeat things, and you might have to talk a little bit louder. I know from issuing absentee ballots for the last week and a half that I've been talking very loud. I think it's also okay if you want to drop your mask to say, hey, repeat that, and put it back on, that's okay. But that's one of the things that we've changed because we want to continue to make it as safe as possible for all of you and for the voters and even for the election observers. So some of the things that we've got those shields again. We're going to give everybody this election, instead of these NK95 masks, we're going to have these masks. These are N95 masks. These are the highest grade mask you can have. And so the way that these work, if I can, pop it on just like this. And then you do something, you pop this part on first. Like that. So, but we'll have these for everybody. We're going to require you guys to wear these. We're also going to have face shields available. We're not going to require you to wear a face shield. That's solely for your decision. If you choose to wear a face shield, that's fine. They'll be available. We got a generous donation from Prent of additional face shields to bring out to all of our polling places, which was incredibly kind and generous of them because they want to support what you guys are doing. And so we appreciate that. We'll have gloves available at the polling places. Again, you're not required to wear gloves, but you can if you choose to. As voters come in, we're going to ask them to wear masks if they don't have them. One of the things to remember is we cannot require a voter to wear a mask. Voters are allowed to not wear masks. The Election Commission has interpreted the law in such a way that the wearing of a mask is creating a voting rule, and only the legislature can create voting rules. So if we do have somebody that comes in that isn't wearing a mask and doesn't want to put one on, my recommendation to you is get them in and out of that polling place as quickly as possible. Anybody on my staff, media that come in, election observers, poll workers, anyone else, they have to wear a mask, and we can require that. And we're going to require that. We're going to have hand sanitizer like we've had the last several elections. We're going to have somebody there this election that's going to be different. We're going to have safety officers assigned to the polling place. Their whole job is going to be make sure that people follow COVID-19 protocols. You guys have enough to worry about with the election. They're going to walk around and make sure that people are doing what they're supposed to be doing. We're going out to Sears and the Job Center tomorrow. We're going to lay those polling places out like we did in April. We're going to have social distancing marks on the floor. We're going to have stanchions for this election so we can create an airport-type line so that people can swing through there and we can keep them spaced out properly. So those are all of the different things that we're doing to try and ensure the safety of you, the safety of the voters, the safety of the observers for this election. Next slide. All right, current election. So this is what's on the ballot in the current election. You've got president and vice president. I don't know if you guys heard about that. Then there's a couple other things that are on the ballot. So we've got representative to the assembly, district attorney, representative in Congress, county clerk, county treasurer, the registrar of deeds. And then there are 3 referendums for those of you that are in Janesville school district wards, which is pretty much everybody except for the folks that are normally at the Church of Latter-day Saints and Ward 26 at New Life Assembly of God. You've got the Black Hawk Tech referendum, which is on all the ballots. The Janesville School District has 2 referendums, and then the Milton School District has 1. So that's wards 19, 20, 21, 22, 26. People are going to ask questions about the referendum. The referendum language is required to be written in a specific manner by state law. And you can tell lawyers created the way the language has to be written because it doesn't make sense. Even though it's all in English, when you put it all together, it might as well be Martian. And so people are going to say, and I've had this happen in the last week, how should I vote on this? And I tell them very politely, I can't tell you how to vote. And the really, really creative ones then say, well, how would you vote on it? And so I share with them that I can't tell them that either. But what we will provide you are explanations for the questions that you can read to them or you can give to them. And that is the only information that you can provide for them. And it's going to be frustrating for some of the voters, but that's just the world that we live in and the rules that we have to follow. Okay, we've got registered write-ins for president and vice president. We also have a registered write-in for Assembly District 44. So these are people that have registered to be a write-in candidate for these offices. It happens all the time in the presidential contest. Every 4 years we see those. We do have one for Assembly District 44. We are going to send lists out to you of all the registered write-ins. You don't post that list. You only have that list if someone asks you. So if I come in, I vote in Ward 25, which Joanne's the chief inspector of, and I come in and I say, who are the registered write-ins for Assembly District 44? She can show me that list. And that's so I can spell that person's name correctly. Now at the end of the night, you have to count all the write-ins for registered write-ins for President, Vice President, and Assembly District 44. You run into an issue or a question of they spell the name wrong. As poll workers, you have to make the decision of what voter intent was. The voter intent was to vote for one of the registered write-in candidates, you count that. If they say that guy who's running, I don't remember his name, That might be voter intent, I don't know. But you have to make that decision. But if you say John Smith and you spell it John Smith because you forgot the H, that's probably pretty clear. One of the other things you have to look at for voter intent and for registered write-ins is the person who forgets to fill in the oval, right? Because once they write something in, that supersedes anything else that they've marked on the ballot. So if I, in Assembly District 44, mark the ballot for one of the candidates who's running, who's on the ballot, and then underneath of it, I write in a different name, the write-in takes precedent, and then you have to do all kinds of changes to your tape at the end of the night, and it gets really, really confusing, and hopefully that won't happen. But if you see a ballot like that, you want to bring it up to your chief inspector. And then they can always call us to walk them through what we need to do. Okay, can we have the next slide? So we're doing something a little bit different with tally slips and with ballot colors. In the last two elections, we didn't make the decision to move and consolidate polling places until within 30 days of the election. In April, we didn't even have an opportunity to make that choice. In August, I was just, as you guys all know, the eternal optimist and was sure that we weren't going to have any more COVID-19, that we were going to be done with it. In August, I also decided, well, COVID-19 is going to be here in November, so let's just plan for it. And so these are the tally slips that we're going to have for this election, because we've got multiple ballots now for multiple wards in one location at the job center, in one location at Sears. We wouldn't normally have that. So you're going to have white, yellow, pink, orange, blue, gray, purple, and green. We almost ran out of colors. Lisa said there was one other color that we could use, and she said the printer really doesn't like that color. It doesn't work very well. And I said, okay, we won't use that one. So just remember that the ballots have a stripe on them now. They're not full color ballots. All right, absentee ballots. As of Tuesday, we had issued over 20,000 absentee ballots and over 18,000 had been returned. As of this morning, those numbers are closer to 22,000 and 19,000. So, a lot of absentee ballot activity in this election, which we expected. Just like we have since 2016, we're going to process absentee ballots at the central count facility. So there's a few things that could happen on election day at your polling place. You could have somebody walk in with an absentee ballot that they filled out and they could hand it to you. And what we're seeing is there's a lot of talk in the media that the post office can't get your ballot from your house to my office in any less than like 6 years. I can't comment for what happens outside of Janesville. I can tell you in Janesville, our post office does a great job. But they are limited by certain time restrictions, and I would certainly encourage anybody that has a ballot that we mailed to them to not put that in the mail at this point, because we're just too close to the election. But we've had a lot of people dropping ballots off. We've had over 7,800 ballots dropped off either at the drop box that we put outside of the Wall Street entrance of City Hall, or they are even afraid to put it there, and they walk it all the way into our office and hand it to us. So you could very well see people dropping ballots off to you on Election Day. If somebody drops a ballot off to you on Election Day, give it to your chief inspector. They're going to document that it was dropped off. They're going to call us, we're going to come out and pick it up, and then we'll take it to the central count facility. I don't think we're going to need to move anybody to help with absentee ballots. We have scheduled a lot of people at the central count location, and I'm very comfortable and confident that we're going to have enough people for central count as it stands right now. Of course, it's Thursday, and we still have to get through the next 5 days. So I don't know what's going to happen in the next 5 days, but if we come tap you on the shoulder and say, hey, it's not real busy here and you have plenty of people, we need you to come over to Central Count, know that that's a possibility. Next slide. All right, so when the voter comes in, right, to vote at the polls, this is something else that we've seen in in-person absentee voting. People come in and they want a ballot, and we go, hey, we mailed you one. Oh, yeah, I didn't fill that one out. Well, do you still have it? Yeah, it's sitting on my kitchen table. So we'll issue them another ballot and tell them to throw that one that's sitting on their kitchen table away. I did get an email, this is totally off topic, from a voter who told me their dog ate their ballot. And could we send them another ballot? I was very impressed by the creativity to tell me that the dog ate the ballot. Okay, so voters are going to be designated in the poll book as having requested and received an absentee ballot. All right? You don't have an absentee ballot log to check. So if they want to vote and the ballot's not been marked as received in the poll book, you have to ask them, did you mail or personally return your ballot to the clerk's office? If they say yes, they cannot vote. Even if they dropped it in the mail on Monday. Well, yeah, I mailed it yesterday, but it's probably not going to get there before the end of the day today. That's unfortunately a voter issue and not a you issue. And so they cannot vote. If they say no, they can vote at the polls. This is one of those things, particularly in this election, and I think we did a great job with this in August because we saw a lot of it in August. We want to document. We want the chief inspectors to know about so that they can document. Issued Dave Godak a ballot, said he didn't mail his ballot in. I think that probably 90% of the documentation on the inspector statements that we had back in August was just that. Voters who came in to vote who had been issued an absentee ballot. So very good job on that. Keep that up. I think it's going to be even more important in this election because I think we'll see a lot more of it. Yes?
So what if a person says, yes, they did mail it back, but they checked my vote and it doesn't show them the receipt, and they insist on voting, at what point, do we call you?
Yes.
If someone is insisting and not listening to us.
Yeah, so someone's insisting that, well, I mailed it back, but it's not showing up on my vote as received, and I'm voting. I'm not leaving here till I vote. You're taking away my right to vote. Don't engage with that. Say, you know what? Let me call the clerk. Call us. We'll send somebody out. We'll deal with that. You guys don't need to worry about that. So, in the poll book is that top piece. It shows the absentee ballot was issued. That's when you have to ask that question. If you go to the next screen, Joanne. At the top, you'll see here, absentee ballot returned. Okay, that means that that ballot was issued, it was sent back to us, and we marked it in as returned. We're going to do that for pretty much every ballot that we've gotten through Saturday of this week. Because we're waiting as long as we can to print poll books so that you have the best information possible. Absentee ballot returned person cannot vote. They've already voted. And again, if they're giving you a hard time, give us a call. One of the nice things about consolidating polling places is it's a lot easier to get to them. Yeah, I used to say all the time, if you had a problem at your polling place, I would be as far away as humanly possible while still being within the city limits of Janesville when you called me. And I would have to violate all kinds of traffic laws to get there. It's a lot easier now when we only have 4. I only have to violate half the traffic laws. If there's absentee returned, they cannot vote. Okay, observers. Anybody that's been around for a while, that's done this for a while, knows that for presidential elections, we always get a lot of observers. Typically, what I've seen is lawyers from Chicago that come up, they sit in a corner, they play on their phones all day, probably bill out $200 an hour or more, and then they leave. And they don't really cause any issues. They just sort of watch the process. One of the best observer stories I can share with you is back when we were voting at Harrison Elementary School. Craig Gramke was the chief inspector there, and he's still a chief inspector. And it was busy. It was 2012, and busy morning. And one of the poll workers came up to Craig and said, "Craig, I'm out of white ballots." And Craig said, "Well, I guess we're done voting today." And these observers all of a sudden put their phones down and their antenna went up and they're like, "You gotta call somebody. You can't just stop voting because you're out of ballots." And Craig said, "Guys, I'm kidding. I've got 2,000 ballots sitting over here. It was a joke. Relax." So he gives the ballots to, by the end of the day, Craig had those observers going to Starbucks and buying coffee for all the poll workers. And they were paying for it. So, you don't have to have a contentious relationship with the observers. They're there to look at things, to make sure things are on the up and up. We do a great job here. We've always done a great job here. I'm not concerned about observers. What we do need them to do is follow our rules, right? And so they've got to register with the chief inspector. And there's a log that they have to fill out, and when they fill out that log, the chief inspector will give them the rules that they have to follow. They have the right to view all processes. What they don't have a right to do is interfere with processes. And in my experience, observers don't typically do that. They need to be a minimum of 6 feet away. We can enforce that social distancing rule. The typical rules are they should be 3 to 5 feet away from the process they want to observe. In this instance, with COVID, we can make that 6 feet away. We're going to try and mark observer areas for you to put observers at your polling places. Okay? He said they cannot interfere with the election process. Asking Joanna questions, not interfering with the election process. They can't talk to voters unless the voter engages them in conversation. So I'm an observer, Joanne's a voter, I can't be like, "So, how you doing today?" They can't do that. But if Joanne comes over to me and says, "Where do I go with my ballot?" And I've been sitting there for 8 hours, so I know the machine's right over there. I can tell it goes over there. And because a lot of these observers are lawyers and they are billing out $200+ an hour, they're wearing suits, and they look really, really professional and like they know what they're talking about. And so voters will ask them questions. We've had observers every day since we've done in-person voting, and the number of voters that will go ask them a question just because they're kind of sitting there and they just look like they're overseeing everything is just something that people tend to do. They go, "Oh, you must be in charge because you're just sitting there." And so the observers that we've had at Central Count have done a really nice job of going, "You need to talk to them." Unless it's something simple like, "No, the glue stick's right there. That's how you seal your ballot." Can you hit the next one? Chief inspectors, you can order an observer out of the polling place. This is not something to take lightly. It's not something to do flippantly. It's something that if you're going to do it, you definitely need to call us because you have to give them an order to leave the polling place. My suggestion to you would be before you send somebody out, you try to resolve the issue that they're causing. So you've got an observer that's sitting over in their designated observer area over here, and they're sitting there like this. Okay. I guess I wasn't as good with this as I thought. They're sitting over there like this with their mask. You know, that's probably not a reason to kick them out the first time. You can tell them, you need to put your mask on. All right, can everybody hear me? Am I back? Oh, there we go. All right, you know, you can tell them, put your mask back on. If you have to do it 2 or 3 times, then you're probably getting to the point where they're just not complying with the rules, and you can tell them to leave. And again, it's like everything else that you guys are doing on election day. If you're doing something that's reasonable, I'm going to support what you do. It's when you do unreasonable things that you're on your own, right? If you're doing it and it's reasonable and it makes sense, I'll defend it to the hilt. If you're not being reasonable, you and I are going to have a whole different conversation. One of the things that we've talked to WEC about, because we expect an influx of observers, because we've had comments made in the media that you got to go watch. You got to make sure this is on the up and up. And that's fine. Once again, I'm happy to let anybody come in and watch the process that we follow, because we follow the law. You guys do a great job. I'm not worried about it. But we also have to think about the space requirements that we need. And if we've got 25 people coming into someplace like City Hall to observe, I don't have any room for voters anymore. So you can limit how long someone's there. You can limit the number of people that are in there. Again, it needs to be reasonable. But you can say to somebody, you know, you've been here for an hour. I've got 2 people standing outside that want to come in and observe. I'm going to need to have you leave. That's a reasonable thing to do. I would probably tell them that as you're sitting them into the observer area. We're going to give you an hour, or whatever that time frame might be. I don't know if we're going to reach that, but it's something to think about. And chief inspectors, if you have an issue, if you've got a ton of observers, let us know and we can talk through how to make that work. Someplace like Sears, there's so much space in that building, it's probably not going to be an issue. Hedberg Public Library, even the Job Center, could be a little more of a question. Yes? No, they do not have a right to see the voter's photo ID. The photo ID contains what's called PII, personally identifiable information. They have no right to see that. They can review the poll book. They can't look at the confidential list. And we do, through registrations, have, I believe it's now 3 confidential voters in Janesville. And chief inspectors will let you know where those are when you pick your books up. But no, they can't look at someone's photo ID. Yes? Okay, carrying weapons. So we'll talk about this real quick. Here's all of our polling places. We have always posted and will continue to give you signs to post. Weapons are not allowed in the building. And we cite city ordinance that allows that. Nobody can come in with a weapon. If somebody comes in with a weapon, I would probably tell them, for openers, you're not allowed to have a weapon inside. And if they say, oh, okay, and they go back out to their car and they put it in their trunk, great, no harm, no foul. They didn't know. We'll give them a pass. If they say, I have the right to carry a weapon, I'm carrying a weapon, you can't stop me from carrying a weapon, okay, and then you call 911. Where it gets a little trickier is outside. right? We've got the concealed carry rights and open carry rights in Wisconsin, and we can't infringe upon those. But we do want to know if somebody is open carrying at a polling place, right? That's a phone call that we're going to make to the police department. And the police department's going to maintain that person's right, but they're also going to ensure public safety. And so it's something that we've talked about. It's something that we've planned for. I don't know how many of you read the Gazette. There was an article about this in the paper yesterday, which pretty much laid out the things that we talked about and some of the restraints that we have. And so, again, we want you guys to be safe. And so inside the polling place, absolutely no go for weapons. You need to post that sign, though. That sign needs to be on the front door. So we have lots of signs that are legally required. That's not one of them. But that's probably the most important sign that you're going to put up, because that's going to ban weapons. Not that a sign's going to stop somebody, but as soon as that sign goes up, the police then have an ability to intervene and to intercede. And they will. And I'm going to tell you that regardless of what happens in this election, you guys being safe is our primary concern. I don't have any information or any concerns that we're going to have issues of some of the things that have been in the national media about armed militias showing up to our polling places to intimidate voters. I'm not seeing anything like that. I'm not hearing anything about that. But I much rather you all err on the side of caution and make the phone call than not make the phone call and be wrong. Right? So if you see something and it doesn't look right and it doesn't feel right, call 911. Officers will get dispatched. For those of you who have been around for a long time, you know that historically for presidential elections, because even in the best of times, they're a little more heated than the average February primary. Police officers have always come and walked through the polling places a couple of times a day. And Chief Moore and I talked, and we both agreed that given the current climate, that's probably not a good idea. And so we're not going to have that at this election. But they are going to be close. They are going to be patrolling the areas around the polling places. So they're easily able to get there if they need to. They just aren't going to do those proactive walkthroughs. Any other questions on that? Sir?
Weapons or guns are not allowed?
The posting says weapons. Okay, voter identification. Just remember, voters are required to show ID in order to vote. There's an exhaustive list of acceptable forms of voter identification. We give you a handout on Election Day that has that exhaustive list, and what that means is if it's not on that list, it's not acceptable. I've had 4 people in the last week and a half who have tried to vote in-person absentee using an out-of-state ID. And one of them got really grumpy when we told him, no, you can't vote with that. Voters have to say it, show it, and sign it. They have to state their name and address. They have to show their photo identification. They sign the green poll book, red ink pen. And again, we're encouraging voters to bring their own pens. So if they bring a blue pen, let them sign with the blue pen. They can keep their pen when they're done. Right? I'm not worried about red ink. The red ink has always been a thing that we've used because it makes the voter stand out when we're going in and recording votes after the election is done. We'll just have to figure it out if it's in blue or black ink. You have to look at the photo identification and determine if the photo reasonably resembles the person. in the under the category of I'm not creative enough to make this stuff up, last week we had a gentleman come in to vote in person absentee, and he showed up and he gave us his identification card that was issued by the United States Navy, which is a military ID, is perfectly acceptable. The problem is it's from when he enrolled in the Navy or enlisted in the Navy in 1957. And I explained to him that, the standard was you have to reasonably resemble the person in the photo. And he said to me straight-faced and seriously, I haven't changed. Well, the kid in this photo has all his hair, and he doesn't have any wrinkles. So you're either going to have to give us something else, or you're not going to be able to vote today. In the 6 years that we've had photo ID, that's the only time that I've looked at a photo ID and been like, yeah, there's no chance. Next thing you have to do is say, is the photo ID acceptable? Is it on that list? Mostly what you're going to see are Wisconsin-issued driver's licenses and identification cards, passports, and the occasional military Veterans Affairs ID. Those are the big four. There are some other ones. If you've got something and you're not sure about it, ask the chief inspector, give us a call. We'll let you know if it's okay or not. Some things not to call us about: Illinois license, that's not okay. Can't be an out-of-state license. Driver's license and Wisconsin ID cards may be expired after November 6th, 2018. So if it expired back last year, you can still use that. And we have seen some of those. Joanne, you're doing a great job. If a voter does not have a photo ID, they need to return home and get their photo ID, or they may vote provisionally. If they want to vote provisionally, get your chief inspector. They can walk them through the provisional voting process. Go ahead. Confidential voters are exempt from the photo ID requirement. They simply need to show the confidential ID card that we've issued. Confidential voter does not need to state their name or address, but they do have to sign the poll book. So they're in a separate section of the poll book. They have a number. They come in, they show you a card that we give them with that number. You look it up, say, yep, have them sign it. Boom, give them their ballot, and they go. All right, now we're gonna zip through this next part really, really fast unless somebody has questions, and we'll give you an opportunity at the end to ask questions. Before we do this, I want to let you know that back in August, we had lunch and dinner for everybody, and we're going to do that again in November. We're going to bring in lunch and dinner, and I just want to recognize Nolan and Mallett Law Firm. They called me about a month ago and said, hey, we're willing to pick up the tab for lunch. So they're going to do that for everybody. They want to help support our efforts, so really appreciate that. Want to thank them. We also had some individual citizens who said, hey, I can't work the polls because of an underlying health condition, but here's some money, buy the poll workers food. So I want to thank all of those folks also and recognize them. It's really nice to see that support from the community for you guys, realizing how hard you work. It makes me really happy. I wish folks had realized it 10 years ago, the level of effort that you all put into making these elections go off seamlessly. All right, so before the polling place opens, somebody goes outside and says, hear ye, the polls are now open. Set up your express vote, have two people lift that up onto the table. Position the machine so it protects people's privacy. Verify the seal number that is in the express vote to what's on the chief inspector's statement. Plug the machine in and turn it on. Set up your DS200, plug it in, press the power button to turn it on. Verify the seal number on the inspector's statement, the chain of custody form. Open your ballot box, make sure it's empty, there's nothing in there. Set up all your voting booths. Set up your check-in tables with tally slips, ballots, poll lists. Sign the poll lists. If you're issuing tally slips, you have to record the first number that you issue and the last number that you issue. If The atomic clock has the official time, so use that. Post your required notices. A lot of that's going to be on the Triple Crowns. We're going to have all the required notices. What you are going to need to do, because we have so many polling places consolidated in so many wards, is you're going to have to tape up your sample ballots for all of your wards onto the walls, right? And it's 2 sample ballots per ward. And a question I always get asked is, why does it have to be 2? It's because the law says it has to be 2. I don't understand it. I'm not going to question it. It's just what we have to do. Go ahead, Joanne. See, 2 sample ballots per ward. Make sure there's a picture of how to mark a ballot in your voting booths. All right, next. All right, election inspectors, you have to initial the ballot and hand it to the voter. Explain the ballot to the voter. You know, complete the oval next to the candidate of your choice. Vote for one in each office. It's a 2-sided ballot. When you're done, take it to the machine over there. You know, the stuff that the voters need to know. You can assist voters if they request your assistance. Privacy folders are available for voters, and make sure you keep all of your marked and unmarked ballots secure. Okay, voter makes a mistake on the ballot. They have to sign the supplemental inspector statement to get an additional ballot. Issue them a new ballot. They receive a maximum of 3. It's just like baseball, 3 strikes and you're out. Provisional voting can only be used in 3 situations. A voter that's registered by mail and is marked POR required, and the voter doesn't have proof of residence. We don't have any of those in Janesville. So we're down to 2 ways that somebody can vote provisionally. The first is their election day registration, and they're either unwilling or unable to provide their driver's license number, meaning they've been issued a valid driver's license, they have a valid number, and they just won't provide it. The other one is if they don't have an acceptable photo ID. You might see some of that with this election. We're seeing a lot of people that don't have, more than normal, that don't have acceptable IDs. Remember, the address on their photo ID does not have to match where they live. It's just the picture, the name, and the expiration date are what you're worried about. The name matches, the face reasonably matches, and it's not expired, or in the case of a driver's license or ID card, it's expired after November 6, 2018, they're good to go. Chief inspectors can handle voters and provisional ballot process. Chief inspectors have a checklist to follow. Make sure you're calling us about those. Okay, at the end of the night, closing the polls. One of the things to remember for this election, anybody who's in line gets to vote. One of the things we're going to ask our safety officers to do is stand at the end of the line that says it's now 8 o'clock, with a sign that says it's 8 o'clock. Nobody else is allowed in the line. And the safety officers we're going to use are going to be city staff because they've been trained on how to be hated by the public. So we'll put them in that position. Now, one of the things that you have to be aware of, and that's where our line monitor is going to be, but one of the things you have to be aware of is, what does in line look like? Right? If I'm sitting at the registration table at 7:55, and anybody that's been a poll worker for a while will tell you that someone will show up at 7:55 and say, I think I have to register. And it takes me 10 minutes to register, that person still gets to vote. But with your line monitor, you need to work out beforehand, chief inspectors, that you're going to walk people over and say, they were at the registration table, let them in line. They were already in line, we had to pull them out to register. Ensuring all absentee ballots have been processed, and what that means at the polling place is that you have an absentee ballot that's been delivered to you. Processed means you've called us and we've come and picked it up. Because nothing makes Diane angrier than 9:35 hitting, and she's been counting 21,000 ballots, And then I call her up and say, Diane, I got a couple more for you. They carried them in. They didn't tell us about it. Ensure absentee ballots have been processed. There's some questions about this. The machine's supposed to be programmed to print all the tapes that you need. From what Derek told me during testing, that's not accurate. So I'm going to find out about that for sure. But we need 5 tapes this election from everybody. And Joanne, we need 6 from you. If you have observers announce results, and you're going to have observers at City Hall and at Sears, I've already been told the AP is going to send people out to those 2 locations to get results in an effort to try and call the presidential race. So you're going to have observers there for sure that are going to want results. If you have any other observers, announce your results. And all your announcement is, Ward 1, Biden 12, Trump 12, just straight down the list. And then you go to Ward 2. You don't have to consolidate things for them. That's their job. Next slide. Place all your total tapes into the blue security bag. Make sure at least 3 election inspectors sign all of the tapes. Derek's least favorite thing to do is have to photocopy a tape because we only have 1 tape that has signatures and we have to send it to all these other people, and so he has to unfold and print and then fold and unfold and print. He hates that job. When I was in his position, I hated that job. It was the first thing I gave up. Turn off the express vote, remove the thumb drive, and place that in the blue security bag. Close the DS200. Follow the separate instructions that the chief inspectors have for those for reprinting so that you have plenty of tapes. Place the thumb drive in the blue security bag. Review the ballots for registered write-in candidates. Record write-ins on both of your return sheets. Complete the return sheets. If you have any discrepancies in voter counts, you've got 10 voters in Ward 1 that the machine says you have, and you only have 9 voters that you issued ballots to. We need to know why there's a difference there. Generally, it's because you gave somebody a Ward 2 ballot, and it's completely the flip way on the other ward, and you've got 10 ballots in Ward 2 and only 9 voters. That describes it. We don't generally have those, but if you've got a discrepancy, we need to know about that. Place completed registration forms in the suitcase. It's got a lot of personal information on it. We want to get that back and into our vault as quickly as possible. Sign all the required documents, seal ballots in the plastic bags, lock those in the ballot bin. Chief inspectors will return results to City Hall. And then at the end of the night, I ask that everybody leaves together after everything's done. It's dark. It's been a long day. It is November. We could have 70 and sunny, or we could have 3 feet of snow, right? We want to make sure everybody gets out of there together and safely. Next slide. Please arrive at 6 a.m. and park away from the door. Remember, there's no electioneering within 100 feet of the polling place entrance. And electioneering is one of those things that you definitely know it when you see it, but it's not really black and white. For example, somebody pulls in and they've got a bumper sticker for one of the candidates on their car, and they pull in and they go out and they walk in and they vote and they leave. That's not electioneering. Somebody sets their pickup truck up with a big A-frame sign and a bullhorn, and they drive around the parking lot all day saying, "Vote for my candidate." That's electioneering. If you see electioneering, you should try and get it to stop. You should call us. We'll come out and help with dealing with that. Yes? How much wiggle room are you going to give to clothing? I think there's 2 ways that you can look at clothing. Someone's wearing a button and they walk in and they aren't drawing attention to themselves. It's probably not electioneering. And I would be okay if if that person just comes in, votes, and leaves, not a big deal. So that's one way to interpret it. Another way to interpret it is to make it very black and white and say, take the button off. But then you need to make sure you're telling everybody to take the button off. So my best advice to you is, make the decision that you're comfortable with. And again, as long as it's reasonable and consistent and fairly enforced, I'm going to support it. But I wouldn't make something a bigger deal than it is. Right? If somebody's just got a button on and they're just walking through, and again, they're not bothering anybody, they're not doing anything, it's probably okay. But if you as poll workers take the position on election day that it's not, that's your call to make, and I can support that. Joanne, you look like you have a question. No? Okay. Questions for chief inspectors, please call that 755-3073 number. Please don't call my direct line or my cell phone because I might not be able to answer those. And you might actually really need something. So you guys are pretty good about not doing that, but just so you know. And I thank everybody. We are 5 minutes early, so does anyone else have questions? And feel free to shout them out because that light is really bright, and so is that one. So it's really hard for me to see anybody that's not in the first 3 rows. Suitcases. I'm guessing noon on Saturday, but I will have Derek call everybody for sure. I got to find out from Liz when she's going to have poll books ready. Yes? Is there a choice between face masks and face shields? Face masks are required. Face shields are your option if you want to add that on. Yes? Can we play solitaire on our laptops or our cell phones? God bless you. If you have the time to do that, absolutely. I would be a little surprised if you have time to do that, but I don't have an issue with that, no. Go right ahead. Are we going to set the job center up early also? Yes, we will be setting the job center. We're going to do Sears and the job center tomorrow. We're going to do central count on Monday. I'm going to try to get to the library Monday, and I'm going to try and get to City Hall Monday. Right now, we can't do anything in City Hall because we're using that space for in-person absentee voting. But yes, we're definitely going to have the job center set up, and we're going to set it up just like you guys set it up in August. We did one setup, and I came in, and you guys changed it, so you clearly didn't like what I did, which is fine. So I took pictures of it so I would remember how you had it set up. So I then drew a beautiful layout, and then somebody asked me if my kids did it. Obviously, I wasn't paid for my artistic skill. Yes? Extra copies of the citywide street list? Sure. Jerry?
Regarding absentee ballots being returned in person, someone sprinting up to the building after 8 o'clock is denied acceptance, correct?
Somebody is running up to the building, it's 8:01, and they want to turn in their absentee ballot. Do you accept it? No. Correct, you do not accept that. It's after 8 o'clock.
I voted absentee because I didn't know whether I would be assigned to my polling place. But we had machines, so you're saying, just like in normal voting, we wouldn't have a paper ballot, and they're just pushing it,
Correct. So for the in-person absentee voting, we set up express votes for everybody to vote on, and there were a couple reasons that we did that. One is that those cards take about half the time to run through the machine as a full-size ballot. 2, it's really hard for voters to make mistakes on those ballots. It's not impossible, but it's really, really hard. But at the polling place, you'll have regular paper ballots like we've always had. What if someone shows up with their absentee ballot and they say, I made a mistake on this? What I would recommend that person do is take that ballot back out to their car and put it in their car, and then come back and ask to vote in person. And you will ask them the question, did you mail your ballot in? And if they say, well, no, I didn't. Did you personally deliver it? No, I didn't. Then give them a ballot. You still have to run them through those questions. The problem when they come in with their ballot and they say, I want to vote, can I just use this ballot, is technically they're turning it in. So if you quickly get them to go outside, they haven't turned it in yet, and then they can vote. Is there designated parking for the inspectors? No, we don't have designated parking spots for inspectors. We just ask that you don't park in like the first 10 parking stalls, kind of park away from the building. You'll see where everybody's parking together. Yeah, park under a street light. That's a very good idea. If you're in a parking lot and there's the street light there, park underneath there. Other questions? Okay, go. Sure, I mean, you can absolutely make that decision to let people come in through a different door. We can look to get that signage up, yes. Yes?
Normally, as you said, we'll have a lot of registrations. As Sears are talking stands, are you going to have separate lines for registration and voting, or how is that?
Didn't really think about registration because I don't expect that many of them. I would certainly, the way I would recommend that you handle Sears, you should have somebody at that front of the stanchion asking people if they're registered to vote or not. Hopefully they know. You'll probably catch a majority of them that need to register if you ask that question. I can tell you that I've asked on a daily basis people at the back of the line for in-person absentee voting, does anyone need to register? And they all tell me no. And then they get up to the front of the line and they need to register. There is some confusion with folks. They go, well, I registered with the DMV. And then we have to explain to them that Wisconsin's one of like 6 states that doesn't have motor voter, that you can't register with the DMV. But I changed my address with them. Great, and they're really appreciative of that. Now you have to change it with us. Yes? You haven't received anything. Give us a call because there's a reason. You should have received it. We sent the letters out a while ago, a little bit later than I would have liked to, but it was last Friday. Oh, wow, and somebody just got theirs yesterday. So mail's taking longer than we suspected. So, but yeah, give us a call. We can tell you where you're assigned. That's a great number to get general information. 755-3073 is a great number for election information. Yes, Jerry. Curbside voting.
One of the Madison TV stations has been advocating, and election rules state that the voter is unable to walk in himself. There could be people that just want to do it because they think it's faster.
Mm-hmm.
Got any recommendations?
People who want to vote curbside, one of the issues is that we certainly don't want to question whether somebody is eligible to be a curbside voter. We have to take their word for it. Will people do it to try and skirt the line to make it faster? They might. What they have to realize is that it's a multi-step process, and it's not going to be easy to do. The thing I'll tell you is that you should have enough people that it's not going to hurt the flow inside the building to send 2 people out to do curbside voting. Yes? Well, I think that's only fair. Will chief inspectors have a list of their workers this time? Yes, you should have a list of all of your workers. We've not seen the flux in, I'm volunteering, no, I'm not. We have made very minimal changes to that list in the last 7 days. So it shouldn't be an issue to have you have that list. One of the issues is for you guys, you know, we've got Sears South and Sears West. And so we haven't really divided it beyond that. We can certainly take a look to try and do that. That'll be a little more challenging, but I'll see what we can do for that. How will you know when the suitcases are ready? They should be ready at noon tomorrow, noon on Saturday, but I will have Derek call everyone. Yes? Yes, we're consolidating the DS200s to make it easier. You had a question? Well, there's a south entrance and a west entrance. The south entrance is between Kohl's and Sears. And then the west entrance faces Milton Avenue. So the question is, where was Sears South? I thought there was just a Sears. Yeah, it's just the entrance. Any other questions? Yes? Yes, if you do have something that comes up, if you get up and do that health assessment in the morning and all of a sudden you can't smell your coffee and you've got a 101-degree fever, I hope that you feel better, but please don't come infect everyone else. Stay home and just call this number and let us know, hey, I'm not going to be able to make it today, and that's fine. Yes? Yeah, we decided not to do a sign-in just for the fact of we didn't want people getting all on top of each other. So we're just going to give everybody credit for training. Except for Joanne. She's going to have to earn extra credit by going down to City Hall later and sorting absentee ballots. Any other questions? Yes? Sure. You can absolutely bring snacks in if you're diabetic or if you're just like me. I've always got a cup of coffee with me because I drink coffee, and the fine people at Yeti make sure it stays nice and warm even when I blather on for an hour and 15 minutes like I've done right now. So that is perfectly fine. We just don't want to have like community snacking. Yes. No. You can. If you're busy and you don't have to call us the second someone drops one off. We just need to know about it in a reasonable time frame. You know, I don't wait until 7:30 to say, oh yeah, I got 75 ballots dropped off. Yep, if you tell Darnisha, that's fine when we call. All right, well, I want to thank everybody for coming today. I want to thank you for working the polls. For those of you who are new, I hope that we didn't scare you too much. It's going to be fine. You're going to do a good job. You're going to have fun. You're going to ask, why have I never done this before? And I will see all of you on Tuesday. And I just want to thank JPAC for allowing us to use this space. I think that these in-person trainings are far better than when I just talk into a camera and it's on television. So thank you to all the fine folks here at JPAC. We would ask you guys to exit the same way that you came in, and I will see you all on Tuesday.